Robert Mugabe's legacy as one of the most ruthless tyrants of modern times will remain long after his days as notorious statesman of Zimbabwe are over. What could turn out to be the 93-year-old leader's final night in charge of the troubled South African nation concluded in typically chaotic fashion, with the army saying it had Mugabe and his ambitious wife Grace in custody following a takeover of the state broadcaster. Tensions escalated after the First Lady appeared to be positioned to replace Mugabe's recently fired deputy Emmerson Mnangagwa, leading many in Zimbabwe to suspect she could eventually succeed her husband. The elderly politician's second wife, after Sarah Hayfron died in 1992, remained unpopular with some Zimbabweans because of her lavish spending, including in London's plush stores, while many around her struggled against the country's crippling economy. Mugabe's savage rule over Zimbabwe was dominated by murder, bloodshed, torture, persecution of political opponents, intimidation and vote rigging on a grand scale. Army statement as it takes control of state broadcaster. Zimbabwe Army statement as it takes over state broadcaster 0116. He was the man who, in 1980, became the head of government of Zimbabwe, chosen to guide the country towards democracy after 14 years of rebellion against the crown headed by the Southern Rhodesian leader Ian Smith. Dirty work carried out by bullying henchmen. Much of Mugabe's dirty work was carried out by his bullying henchmen, veterans of the guerrilla war against the Smith regime. They attacked and often murdered white farmers, burning their homes, looting their possessions and confiscating their land, while his political opponents were often beaten, sexually abused and sometimes charged with treason and homosexual offenses. The economy of this mineral-rich country descended into chaos, with thousands of people reduced to grinding poverty, many of them suffering from near starvation and worse. His relationship with Anglo-Saxon Unholy Alliance. Mugabe's relationship with the Commonwealth, which he dubbed an Anglo-Saxon Unholy Alliance, was always stormy. Zimbabwe was suspended from the Commonwealth in March 2002 after Mugabe was announced for vote rigging his own re-election. During the Commonwealth Heads of Government Conference a year later, he quit the organization while member states are arguing about Zimbabwe's future. From school teacher to political detention. Robert Gabriel Mugabe was born on February 24, 1924 in Kotama. He was educated at Kotama Mission School and Fort Hare University and obtained degrees in correspondence courses with other educational establishments, including London University. He worked as a teacher at various schools in Zimbabwe, or Southern Rhodesia as it was then, and in neighboring countries. Profile: Robert Mugabe, born 21 February 1924. Full name Robert Gabriel Mugabe, nickname Uncle Bob, born 21 February 1924. Education: Bachelor of Arts, Fort Hare. Mugabe also earned 6 further degrees, including 2 law degrees completed while he was in prison. Career: 1955-60, secondary school teacher in Zambia and Ghana. 1960-63, political activist, Zimbabwe African National Union ZANU. 1964-74, imprisoned by Rhodesian government 1974 onwards, ZANU leader 1980-1987, Prime Minister of Zimbabwe 1987-present, President of Zimbabwe. Quote, "I have died many times. I have actually beaten Jesus Christ because he only died once." Robert Mugabe. Mugabe became Publicity Secretary of the National Democratic Party in 1960 and the following year was appointed Acting Secretary General of the Zimbabwe African People's Union, which was eventually banned. He suffered political detention in 1962 and the following year co-founded and became Secretary General of ZANU. Again he was sentenced, without trial, to political detention in 1964. But escaped in 1974 to Mozambique, from where he led the armed struggle against the regime right up to 1979. As leader, dissidence was met with violence when, through Lord Christopher Soames, Margaret Thatcher brokered a deal in 1979 to end the Ian Smith rebellion. To everyone's surprise, the Marxist Mugabe, with what was described as a mix of conciliatory and intimidatory rhetoric, became Prime Minister from 1980 to 1987. From 1988, he was President of Zimbabwe. The new government, anxious to attract foreign investment, declared that white farmers were a welcome and integral part of the new Zimbabwe. Then the land seizures took place. Plans to redistribute land peacefully were not working and ultimately the wartime veterans were sent in to dispossess the white farmers of their land, often violently. To many cases, the fertile land went to racking ruin, leading to acute food shortages and a dramatic downturn in Zimbabwe's economy. Meanwhile, as Mugabe grew into her 70s he became paranoid. He believed his opponents were trying to kill him. Any voice of dissidence was met with violence and, in the